Artismart wasn't my first business. I went from like, I'm going to be, a lawyer, solicitor, whatever, to be like, I'm going to run a business. And I had no clue. How do you then build inquiries in that 18-month period?
Are there times you feel like an imposter? Hey, thanks for tuning into the Flightpath podcast. We filmed the podcast episode with Rowan Kunz, director and founder of Artismart. This was amazing, especially for me, because one of the first interviews that I did was actually on Artismart, on one of their case studies, and it's just cool to see the change. I really enjoyed this episode, so without further ado, buckle up and listening to the Flightpath podcast. Okay, hello. Welcome back to the Flightpath podcast. We're here with Rowan Kunz, owner of Artismart Education. Brilliant man we go far back, don't we?
We do.
3-4 years around there.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I met you when you were in year 11, end of year 11, I think, about to start year 12. So it's been really awesome to see the journey from knowing you then and knowing the aspirations that you had for entrepreneurship and what you're wanting to do to then see fast forward to today.
Thanks, cool. Man. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, this man really, he inspired me. I remember when I first got into time blocking and time organization, his idea, and
you went hard on it.
Oh, did I ever?
But I mean, for anyone who knows you, you don't go light.
No. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I have to say one more thing before we get into it, to compliment you. You really were an instrumental figure in my educational life when I first started.
I appreciate that.
And then after Artismart helped me with that, with education and everything. When I first got into business, I remember I asked you a few questions that really helped me. So I want to ask you those questions now in front of an audience.
Cool.
Right? You ready for this?
Not really. Let's go.
So let's start. So my first question is, what actually made you get into business itself? And was Artismart your first business?
So Artismart wasn't my first business. When I was in high school, I guess followed a pretty linear pathway. So I thought, okay, great, get good grades, go to uni. And so for me, it was like, okay, law school, let's work really hard at high school to get in. Got there and discovered, oh, wow, this is nothing like TV. It's nowhere near as great as I thought it was. Definitely felt like it was a bait and switch going on there.
Yeah.
And got there and realized, okay, law isn't for me. What am I going to do? Like I'd spent so much of my time trying to build to that. I guess I was quite fortunate that I have my dad's owned businesses his entire life. My uncles on both sides of my family have run and managed businesses. So for me, as being someone that at the time was 19, starting a business wasn't this crazy career path, right, that only crazy people take when they have nothing else that they can do with their life. It was just like one of any number of normal pathways. And I think that combined with, I guess, having a lot of family and friends in business, one of those, as a mentor, gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Classic book. I mean, now, back in the day, it was not at that point. It was earlier on in the journey of Kiyosaki and all this stuff. And I think for me, that was a really big mindset shift because I'd been so focused on working hard to get into law and, really thinking about, okay, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work for a firm, and to then open up like, hey, there's a different way to think about it.
Right.
And then secondly, like, and I've got all of these like family members that have done it. Like, hey, this isn't like weird. So I would say that played a pretty big role in just opening myself up to that opportunity. And I then was like, great, I went from like, I'm going to be, a lawyer, solicitor, whatever, to be like, I'm going to run a business. And I had no clue.
Yeah, scary stuff.
Of like, what am I going to do?
Scary stuff.
And I feel like a lot of people fall into that category, right? Where they're like, I'd love to start a business, but I've got no clue what it is. And so initially, I ended up just, with a couple of mates. It was like, great. They also were pretty entrepreneurial. They were like, I want to do something. We're like, cool, let's just each week meet up and like throw out crazy ideas. And let's just see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And we did that for, probably, a couple of months before we had some stuff that sort of like, we're like, oh, that's cool. Like, let's give that a go.
Yeah.
And so that was probably like the entry for me into it. Now, my first business was, with a friend, and it was like an importing, exporting business, right?
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah, I mean, this was back in the day.
Yeah.
This was back in the day as well when, like, Alibaba was, like, super new. No one really knew about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now, like... Everyone does, right? So we're like, great, we can... There was, like, these little rechargeable torches, so you could, like... and they would, like, emit light. Great, right?
Yeah.
No one's on these. They're not in the shops in Australia. We're going to bring those in. And look... the business eventually didn't really go anywhere. Like we had the idea, we had conversations with Woolies and different people to like try to, like buyers agents that worked at some of the big places. And then we realized, to do this, you like actually need a fair bit of capital because you've got to buy a lot of the stock in advance. And we didn't have any. And so it didn't really go anywhere. But that was like, I think the first foray into just like exploring an idea.
Well, can I interrupt? What did that teach you? Like, can you think of 2 or 3 things that taught you that you carried through to today? It's hard, right? It's a rough question.
It is, particularly because it was quite some time ago.
Yeah, exactly. But let me give you an example. Did it teach you discipline? Did it teach you self-confidence? Did it teach you how to pitch, how to sell?
Well, I think certainly, right? Like, I mean, what it showed me was that, we were like 19, 20 years old and we'd, through the network of just people and putting things out there, we'd been able to sit down and have a meeting with a buyer's agent at, one of Australia's major supermarket agents.
Stressful stuff.
Which is, for someone that's 19, I think a lot of the time when you're young, or even just for whatever age, right, when you're starting a business, like...
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating, exactly right. And you can feel like that you don't have the expertise or the specialty, the brand, the authority, whatever it is, to actually get in front of people. But more often than not, I find that, when you share the journey you're on, what you're trying to achieve, and particularly if you frame it as like, look, I'd love some feedback, I'm needing some help on this, people are really willing to get in there and help. And I think that was a good example where, I think the guy took the meeting because he was just like, well, these guys don't know what they're doing.
See what happens. Yeah.
I'll give them a bit of advice and I'll help them. And it did. It was I learned a lot from that experience. I'd say that was probably one thing, is that just never... Like I think we negotiate against ourselves a lot, right? In so many different experiences in life where we're the one that's saying, oh, we're not good enough, or we don't have enough expertise, or most of the time other people aren't thinking that. And so I think that's one of the takeouts I definitely had there was like, don't negotiate against yourself. Like actually share your story. Share your story and just frame things as asking for feedback. Like you frame things as asking for feedback from a pitch point of view.
Cool.
People are like, their guard goes down because it's not about, I'm trying to be sold here. It's like this person's just asking for feedback and I love helping. Like I think we're socially conditioned to help each other. And that's how society, I think, operates. And so that was something that I did learn from that, is that framing things as a request, and it was a genuine request. Like, it wasn't just like, if we could have, of course, done something more brilliant.
Yeah, the whole like, hey, going, by the way.
Right. Like, but it was a genuine like, hey, feedback, because it's a really great entry point. And so... They would be probably the 2 learnings just to highlight from that early experience.
So frame things as feedback. That's brilliant. Yeah. There's been a few situations where I've had to speak to some people and like, I learned the same lesson where it starts with, oh, hey, how you doing? By the way, can you help me with this? To like, I just need help. And I don't know what to do. Please tell me what to do.
And people really respond to that, right? Because it's actually pretty rare that someone does reach out and say,
takes balls.
I don't know what to do. And it also then means that you build a good relationship with the person. They're invested in you. They want to help you. And then that means that they're on your team now, right? Rather than sitting across, on opposite sides of the table from someone, they're now sitting next to you going, all right, well, how do we help you get through this? And I think that, that's something that I've definitely just seen as being super valuable ongoing, beyond that first failed little rechargeable torch startup.
I probably have one of those in my car, actually.
Yeah, probably, right?
Yeah. 100%. So, well, curious, man. Like that's fantastic. And, in this podcast, I want to go over the steps that you took to get to where you are today. So it's good that we covered step 1. Now, step 2.
Which is just, I would say, just to like maybe tie that together, right? Sure. For anyone listening who's on the journey of wanting to start, I think step 1 is honestly, you've just got to throw things out there and see what sticks.
Cool.
Right? I mean, because that was what that first experience was. It was finding like-minded people, so getting a community around you of people that are wanting to do similar things. And then just like starting to, like the whole point of us starting to brainstorm what are opportunities, what are crazy things that we see, was it meant that we were looking every day in the world around us for problems that people were having, opportunities. And it just changed the way that I think you look at the world. I think that's really key. And so I'd say like, that's almost step 1, right?
Well, speaking of that actually, because I've noticed that nowadays in friendships, that people say they trust each other, but when it comes to business ideas, they tend not to.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always that risk that, my friend might take my idea. So what I want to know is that, back then you had that brainstorming session where you would throw ideas out, you throw it out, see if it sticks. Did you ever have that feeling that you're like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should keep this to myself? And what would your advice be to someone who's having that right now?
Yeah. So not really. I think in part because, look, of course, there are occasions where, it does it does pay to be cautious. And what I mean by that is I think the occasions where it pays to be cautious is more so when you're speaking to actually a business in the same space as you, right, that has a very tangential product or service where the idea that you're sharing is relatively easy for them to implement.
Yeah.
Because you've got then speed to market as like almost non-existent, resources, there's a whole lot of criteria. So an example that I experienced where, we, another business I've run, it was an ed tech startup that we basically created like an individual, it was a platform that enabled teachers to create individual playlists of learning for students.
That's brilliant.
So rather than being, one size fits all in a classroom, you could drag and drop, create an individual list, goes to the student, they've got a personalized learning experience. And
That's
so
fantastic.
one of the things that, we were cautious of at times was we might be looking for, a partner to distribute us into a market.
Yeah.
Okay. They had the distribution because they already had, customer relationships. They had a similar product, pretty easy, if we weren't cautious in maybe what we shared, that they could add on some functionality, roll it out. So I think there are cases like that. What I would say though is that they tend to be the exception than the rule, is generally what my experience has been. And so unless, you're speaking to someone that, has got like crazy ability to implement fast, right? My experience is usually there's not a problem in sharing it. It's usually going to make the idea better rather than risk it being taken and, being implemented, by someone else. So I think
who your peers are.
Yeah, I think the key thing is, I think it's a question of, is it something that requires as well fast implementation? Because I think there are things where there might be the idea, but actually there's a lot of IP that needs to be built. There's a moat that's going to be created as a result of the IP. Then it doesn't matter if you're sharing the idea because the IP is going to sit there, like if it's like an iceberg, right?
Yeah.
The idea is just the tip above the water anyway. So long way to answer your question would be, I think it's important to consider, yes, the nature of the idea itself. Is there an element whereby, actually there's a whole lot of IP, moat, et cetera, that's going to come from it. So sharing it doesn't have an impact. And then two, yes, is there any risk in, market execution with someone else?
To be smart.
Yeah,
exactly. Art smart.
But I would say though that there's a lot of benefits on the flip side. A little plug. I'd say there's a lot of benefits on the flip side though, because I find that, as I said, like sharing the idea often is how you can get. It's critical to building a team. Yeah. Right. You need to building your first customers, to building partners and stakeholders, and so. It's tricky, right? If you can't share it, it's hard to build the momentum that you need. So,
Well, I would love to go for that. So let's call chapter 1. Let's call it, throw it out, see if it sticks.
Okay.
It's chapter 1.
Cool.
Chapter
let's go
2.
with it. Yep.
Now, this is the second part. So we'll skip the businesses you ran. We'll go to education. So obviously in business, it's one thing to have speed, but it's another thing to learn. So I want to know, did you learn from a traditional education? As you said, you studied law. So did you go on YouTube? Did you read books? What did you do to actually learn info?
So
did you just do it?
Look, I guess when I started, I think the landscape was quite different, right, to what it is today.
Don't mind me asking, when did you start?
So, when I was 18, 19, so it was like 2005, 2006, right? Gotcha. So, from a timing point of view, YouTube's just starting, right? Like, it's not really there yet. Universities...
Still frowned upon as well?
Entrepreneurship, yes, right? So the challenge that I definitely had in that early journey was that the formula was go to uni, get a job, right?
Yeah.
Like that was very ingrained. Uni didn't really have any incubators or anything that, even an entrepreneurship course. I think Stanford might have been the only one that offered anything, right? Formal education from a uni point of view was not going to happen, right? Cool. It just wasn't there. The most they ran was like a business competition and it was just you turn up, you pitch, that was it, right? There was nothing beyond that. So I think for me, really, it came down to like family. I was really fortunate that my father has run many businesses in his life. He was really like often a sounding board, like, hey, Dad, what do you reckon? Sort of thing. And so we'd have a lot of chats about that. And then certainly books, because, YouTube wasn't as advanced as it is today. So, podcasts, super early days, right? Yeah. So a lot of it was books. Actually, one of the things I did as part of the journey was when I knew at the end of first year of uni law, I knew I don't want to be a lawyer, right? I knew clearly, hell no, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. So the second year of uni I took, which was when I started, throwing ideas around with mates, that sort of stuff, was I basically took a year where I just dived deep into like alternate education. So I created my own little curriculum, right? Bit of a nerd at heart. which was like great. If I can't learn, like I was valuing the things I was learning at uni still. They were still useful in other ways. But
that doesn't
not,
make you a nerd. That makes you intelligent. I don't know. If that's what a nerd is.
I'm quite happy to.
I'm quite happy to be a nerd.
I'll take it. Yeah. But yeah, it was like this alternate curriculum for myself, which was like great. Like I just want to go and like read as much as I can about business, marketing, psychology. Just things that I felt would help me learn and understand more. Right. So that was critical. Absolutely critical. Just because I wasn't getting access to it anyway. It was also a way to sort of stay motivated and keep the faith, because it's definitely tough when you're one of very few that are wanting to do that pathway, and all your friends are, my friends I think probably looked at me a little crazily at the time. It's not going to work, right? Because they're like,
get a job.
You're doing a law degree, like you're one of the top universities in Australia, like. Just keep doing this thing and you'll be fine, right? I'm like, I don't think it's for me. So,
how many years did you have? Like 4 or 5?
It was a 5-year degree. Oof. Yeah. I mean, I somehow finished it, but
you finished it still?
Yeah, I finished it. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm crazy.
That's ludicrous. Yeah. Well, okay. Well.
So a lot of reading, and then I was even a bit weirder, right? On top of that, because I also then ended up, just for my own benefit, I ended up writing, and no one's read it except my wife. Right? So it's just like me and my wife, no one else. It was like a personal thing. Basically like a book, which was like my personal manifesto.
Wow.
So it was like, great. Like now that I've done all this reading and I'm sort of like understanding things, it was like, cool, how do I want to live and operate in the world?
Yeah.
Right? And so the title was Live and Learn Enriched, which was sort of funny from what I'm doing today.
That's
right?
Brilliant. That would sell.
I don't know about that. When I read it now, I'm like, no, this is just for me.
Yeah.
Like
the title alone.
The title might be good,
the title,
but it was just for me. 100%. But it was a way that I was trying to like basically like rewrite myself, right? In terms of like, okay, who do I want to be? I'm not saying everyone should go and do that.
No.
I don't think you need to do it, right?
Yeah. But reflecting is important.
But that was, for me, what was like an important part of my journey was to go, great, let's like consolidate. How do I want to operate in the world? And so that was sort of step 2 for me, basically.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Okay, so step 1, throw it to the wall, let it stick. Yep. Step 2, manifestos. We can call it something like that.
I think it's just, it's a commitment to learning at the end of the day, right?
So commitment.
Yeah.
Let's call it that.
Go with that.
Step 3. I want to know specifically about, as you just said, you said something very interesting. You said you finished a degree.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you must have had no time. I'd imagine 0 time, something like that. How did you actually manage your time? Because time is the one thing we can't get back. It's gone. It's not like money. It's just gone and never comes back. So how'd you manage it? Did you manage it?
No, I did.
Did you time block?
No. Well, yes. What I would say is that if we look at the trajectory, yes, I was still doing full-time uni, right? So I was still uni full-time. What I was able to do was I got my uni down into 2 days, 9 to 5, right? So I'm like, how do I just cram it into the smallest amount of time as possible from a face-to-face point of view? That then created the rest of the week to work. I had a job because I was needing to obviously like pay the bills. And
so you had a job, you're at uni, and you were starting this business. Multiple businesses or just the one?
Just the one,
and
right?
This was Art Smart?
Well, we start. Yeah, cool. That's right. Yeah. Now, there's a point where I, pull the plug right on work. But work was an important step in building the additional capital needed to just have the money to be able to do what I thought I wanted to do. Yeah. So work was happening. I think, and again, for those at uni, this might be a little sacrilegious, but I got really good at just not doing a lot of stuff. Right?
Simplicity.
So, it was just really looking at, like a law degree was a lot of reading, right?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do the reading, right?
Right.
So it was basically going, okay, what are the things I can not do? And I basically got really good in second year of uni of working out a system for me.
You were prioritising.
Yeah, that was like, there's certain things I'm going to read. And actually, to be honest, what I realised, and a lot of students didn't, was that if you turned up to class and you took like crazy level notes, right? And you were that annoying kid that asked extra questions, right? They would basically tell you all the answers you needed, right? And you then didn't really need to do the reading, right? So if I got better at asking right questions, so the questions, that I'd be asking would be like, in law school, like you needed to know, were there any like dissenting judgments or, in terms of like a case, because usually that's where there's like, if you were trying to create like an argument, you'd be able to use something that would stand out. We don't need to go into the weeds on this, but the point was I realised, I could go and read that, really fat, boring case to just like mine that dissenting judgment, or I could ask better questions in class.
And get the answers.
Exactly, right? And then if I do need to go and read, I know who it is, where it is, like I can do really sniper targeted stuff. So I think the way that I ended up managing uni was being very, very intentional around what don't I do, what do I do, so that I'm able to still do well, right? But absolutely minimize time commitment.
Beautiful. Pause for a sec.
Yep.
Harley, do you mind just filming some behind the scenes stuff once in a while?
Yeah.
Just for the intro? Thanks, bro. Thanks, man. How's this going so far?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah? Cool.
I mean, I can talk about this stuff for a long time, so you want to be mindful of what questions
think
you
about
ask.
it. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen our social media. You've seen how many short videos
Yeah, you
get
do
pumped
like,
out. Wait, man, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, it'll be good.
So the first segment of the podcast is all about like your life and your journey to get to where you are. And then the second half is all about Art of Smart.
Yeah.
Then the final bit, maybe a walk around the building.
Yeah,
and
cool.
just, walk and talk about your personal life.
Yeah, cool.
How's that?
Yeah.
Cool? Ready to go?
Yep.
Round 2? Okay, cool. All right, chapter 3 of our talk with Rowan. Right, so we've spoken about, the throw it, let it stick.
Yep.
And then the second one was commitment.
Commitment.
And manifestos. And the third one, what are we going to call that one? Let's think for a second.
Third one is, I think it's, you've got to balance stuff, right? At the end of the day, like...
Balance.
Yeah, or even like parallel pathway.
Right.
What I mean by parallel pathway is that the other observation from mentoring a lot of entrepreneurs as well, they get an idea and they're like, I'm going to go all in, right? And it's like, I'm going to quit everything. Now, sometimes that's okay because you've got capital, you've got like something that's really relatively quick to market. But a lot of the time, my observation is that that's not a good immediate call. Like you should probably keep doing the other thing you're doing, right? Just because it's going to like help you pay the bills and help you build up a capital base and whatever it might be. Yeah. And then you start building the side hustle, right? I know that's maybe a bit cliche, but I think it's true. And then there's a point at which you're like, I've got enough data points now from what I'm doing on this other thing that indicates it's now time to like flip the switch and go full time. And so what I would say, this third stage is like, how do you, which is what we're talking about, is like, how do you do it, right? And I think it is about then being really, really intentional and prioritizing, but I'd say definitely parallel pathway, right? How do you keep doing whatever you're doing, work, uni, etc., to create the options that you need there while you start then exploring this other pathway.
Right. Okay. So we've spoken about those pathways and how important it is for entrepreneurs, and I'm guessing yourself, as you did the same way. I would like to know, for example, my 3 principles are efficiency, speed, and quality. Right? What are your 3 principles?
3 principles. Just love putting me on the spot, Tom.
I do. Yeah. But I'm only putting you on the spot because I know you can be.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've done as an exercise that I found really, really helpful was, everyone talks about having values or principles, right? Whatever you want to call them. And was to try to create like a hierarchy of values, right? Because if you don't have a hierarchy, how do you prioritize, right?
Exactly.
2 things up. So I would say for me, my absolute like core first value is actually growth. Right, growth. Right. Yeah, and I like growth like at a personal level in terms of like learning and growing it that way, and then just growth in terms of everything around me, right? Yeah. Like, and so I just realized that if I'm not having growth or experiencing like personal growth, spiritual growth, relationship growth, like I'm not satisfied, right? And so I think like that's like core number 1, right? And then around that, right, connected to that was like learning. That was something that came out in the manifesto that I'd written. Like that's why learn was the first part of that. Yeah. Learning, was really, really important. I think one of the other ones that was, if I had to do my third one, right, so we've got like growth and learning. Yeah, which is like, principle was gratitude.
Growth, learning, and gratitude.
Yeah, growth, learning, and gratitude, right? In terms of just, I think so easy to just lose track of, like how much we do have. And if you're always trying to grow and get better, you're also almost constantly living in a state of dissatisfaction.
Yeah, because you're always like, I haven't done anything.
Yeah, right. Really so the way I was balancing that at a personal level was very much about, just remembering to pause and be grateful for where I am and what I have and the people in my life. And so, they would be the 3.
Very interesting, man. All right, we've covered chapter 4. Chapter 5 now, the fun stuff.
Cool.
Right, so we're not going to go into, how this got built. Okay. We're going to go into how'd you get your first client. Do you even remember your first client? Your first tutoring kid?
I do remember actually really well because
go for it.
What I would say the irony is like I spent all this time throwing ideas around with my friends and that ended up not going anywhere. Right. As in like, we created some stuff, it didn't work, etc. Alongside that though, I remember that a friend from high school, they had a family friend that needed some economics tutoring. And no one was teaching economics. Like I was someone that did it at high school. They remembered and they're like, oh yeah, maybe, you know, like I know someone and I got referred to them and I hadn't done any tutoring at that point, right?
So someone recommended you and you got referred?
Yeah,
so
I got referred. I didn't have to, no outreach, nothing, for the first student ever.
Right.
This is when I personally first started the journey, right? And I remember I didn't even have my P's at the time. So my dad would he was such a champion. He'd drive me through there. He'd wait in the car an hour.
Oh, wow.
Right? Just, I don't know, listen to the radio, sleeping. It was pretty early in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like a Saturday, 9 a.m. or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And then he'd drive me home, right? And well, actually, to be fair, I was driving. I was on my L, so I was trying to get my hours on. But he didn't have to do that. So, yeah, I remember that first session. And what was really fascinating was I think, I'm really big, when you're starting a business, right? I mean, Warren Buffett has this idea of, he calls it the circle of competence. Right. You know, is something within your circle of competence or out, right? Starting a business is hard enough. Like, you're already stacking the odds against you.
Oh, definitely.
When you start a business. So when you start one, it probably makes sense to start one in your circle of competence, right? Rather than going, I know nothing about restaurants, but I really want to open a restaurant, right? It's like, is that a good move? And so I think where I'm going with this is that what happened for me was that as I was starting to get exposure to tutoring and working with young people, one, I realized like, hey, this is really rewarding. Like, I'm another young person. There's not many things in my life that I get to do where I get to have such an impact in someone else's life.
Oh, 100%.
Right? As another young person as well. And so there was definitely part of me that was like, this is like so much better and so much more fun and so much more impactful than I realized. Yeah. But what it also was starting to do was just open a little bit more of that circle of competence, right? Like, hey, there's this thing that I'm getting better at. There's an experience I'm having, which is partly then what led me to go, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's an opportunity here, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to do more. Like, yes, this is just me right now supporting this student. I still remember the student's name, Aveline. Lovely. She was amazing.
Yeah. We'll find her and send this to her.
She'll appreciate that. But definitely it was, this element of like, okay, hey, and what I saw happen was a lot of the stuff that happened in my life started to come together, right? Where I was like, hey, this is incredible. I'm loving it. I'm getting better at it. I don't have all the answers, but I'm certainly getting better at it. And then, hey, wait a minute, all that reading I did last year, right? That was reading about marketing, coaching, like all these different industries. Like, hey, there's a lot of that stuff that we could apply to better support students as they go through the high school journey. Like, what if we combine them and pull them together and create something really cool here?
So you found the nation filled it.
Right. But a lot of it in the end came almost by accident, like in the sense that I wasn't going out there to say, hey, I'm going to start, let's throw ideas out. I'm going to start a business. It was almost like that was happening and I needed to have it because it got me thinking about problems that people were having, right? I needed, in my case, to go away and just spend some time learning and reading and growing, right? But then it was just actually having life experience, like getting out there and doing stuff. Yeah. That was the thing that was like stretching my experience, my circle of competence, which was then culminating in me seeing opportunities. So, yeah.
Right. Cool. So second client, I'm guessing, was a referral?
Probably. I can't remember the second, right? Tough. Which is interesting. I can remember the first so clearly. Yeah. I would imagine no second would have been, without a doubt.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go into the nitty-gritty, into the fun stuff, right? As I said before. Sales, right? So obviously content is a really good sales vertical, but I'd imagine from the start you weren't able to produce that much content.
None. Well, right? I mean, look, the first couple of years it was me doing my thing, just me. Right? I was still at uni. I still wasn't sure yet about whether or not, what I was going to do. Like, I was still trying to work out this pathway. So most of it did come through word of mouth. Right. Right? Most of the, I don't think there was really, any initial advertising that was going on, no content, nothing. It was literally word of mouth. Now,
and advertising was extremely expensive back then as well.
Yeah, it was, right? There was a point though when I realized, hey, I want to actually do more of this. I want this to be something that I'm doing full time and I don't want it to just be me. I want to have a team. And in other words, how do I create a business, right? Not like a hobby, some nice cash in hand while I'm at uni, whatever, right? Yeah. How do I make this into something proper? And then that's when I started getting a lot more intentional about marketing and sales, right? And so I'm assuming I can go into the nitty gritty here. I can tell you some of the stuff we do.
Go for it. Yeah, our audience loves this stuff. Yeah.
So
you're talking to entrepreneurs from 16 to 47, 48, around there.
Cool, perfect. Yeah. So for us, one of the things I realized was, what's going to be our unique selling point in the market? If we're going to come in here and I'm going to do this thing, we've got to have something that differentiates us. Yeah. And so for me, what was really important was that idea of how do we more holistically support students on the journey, right? It's not just about content. in helping them get through high school. Because, at the end of the day, there's a lot of that. It's actually more holistically, what do they want to do when they graduate school, right? Let's get some clarity on that. Once they've got some clarity on that, okay, well, what's actually required of them? What are the subjects they're taking? Okay, great. Once we know that, well, maybe what content do they need to know? How can we help them with tutoring? But also, what are the strategies they might need to manage their time, right? To prepare for exams, to manage stress and anxiety. Like, how do we more holistically look at what's required to really put your best foot forward? And so I realized, great, like we've got that, but then I'm a nobody. I'm just this kid. I'm, 20, 21 maybe at this point, right? And so for me then what I realized was, we need to do something different here that really helps us stand out. And so I ended up deciding to write a book.
Right.
And the pathway was like, great, I'm going to go do some research. So I went and interviewed 50 students. No, not 50 students. I should dial it back. First of all, I got students from all around New South Wales to submit questions that they wanted on their top questions, their top struggles that they were having with school and 11 and 12. Basically, it was like, great, tell me your biggest pain points. Right. So I can go and build a solution.
Learning the problems.
Right.
Learning the issues.
Yeah, so that then we can have something that's going to speak to you and really help you.
Right.
So we got that, and then from that I got 50 questions is where I was going with that, right? Cool. We got 50 questions that were like, hey, these are the stuff that there's no good answers to. Please help us, right? And so from that, I then went out and I spoke to 100 98 plus ADAS scorers, right? So students that were in the top 2% of the state, and I was like, hey, what did you do?
How did you find them? You just message them, email them, or?
Yeah, I just
you couldn't exactly find them on Instagram,
no,
right?
No. So, look, Facebook was just around then, right?
Yeah.
So, and as well, MySpace was on its deathbed, but it was still there. So a lot of it was just social media outreach, right? It was like reaching out to friends. It was asking them if they knew friends, it was just trying to reach out to as many people. I was fortunate, though, that, one, I went to a school, where, a lot of students did pretty well. So I had lots of, just friends that I could pull upon. I was at a uni doing a degree where everyone did, 99 plus, right? So there was a lot of people I knew there. So I had networks I was able to just from, my
So you
life.
used the tools at hand.
Yeah.
Right.
And then from that, so I then basically wrote I thought, okay, I'm going to pitch this to get it published. I was like, that's what you're meant to do. That's the way that you approach it. So I spent all this time learning how to write book proposals, submitted it to something like 20 publishers.
Oh, wow.
Right. And pretty much no one replied. I did get a couple of lovely people because I'd call them to follow up.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I'm like, cool, let's check in. And I got a couple of people that were really lovely that were like, look, you're 20, 21, no one knows you, we're not going to publish this, and even if we were, it's 18 months, timeline, right? And I'm like, I'm going to launch this business in 3 months. I don't want to wait 18 months, right? Right? So in the end, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it myself. So ended up, again, this was very different. It's not Amazon, Kindle print anymore.
Yeah.
That wasn't there. So for me to self-publish, I went and found a printer in Hong Kong, right? That could print. Right, print it, got the book, laid it out, horrible, but I just laid it out myself, right? Did it, found the printer in Hong Kong, and then I needed to print it in sufficient volume to get the cost down per unit, right? So I'm like, all right, I'll print a couple of thousand copies. I think it was 3,000 or 4,000 copies, right? Because it got it down to a couple of dollars a book.
Big book?
Sweet.
Or?
Oh, it's 200 pages, right?
Yeah,
so it's not horrible. And then I'm like, all right, I'll get them shipped to Australia. Don't know where to store them. I didn't really think that 2,000 books or 3,000 books was a lot of books, right? 2 pallets turn up to my parents' place.
Oh, man.
Right? So I'm still living with my parents at the time. And I'm like, oh, where am I going to put this? I paid for it on my credit card. That's why I'd been working. I'd been saving, but also getting a credit card and put on my credit card. I'm like, okay, great. And then I was like, how do I sell it? I did all the work to think about the first product, so to speak.
You focused on the product.
Part of differentiation, right? Yeah. And then I'm like, shit, my parents are going to kill me. I've got I've got a credit card debt sitting here, which, 19% interest or whatever it was, right? So I'm like, I want to pay that down fast. And then secondly, my parents are like, you got to get rid of this stuff quick because there's no way to store 2 pallets,
just sitting on the lawn, wasn't it?
Oh, on the driveway, right? Yeah. So, then it was all right, started hustling, got on the phone and started calling distributors. And really fortunate, found a book distributor. They came out, met me. They're like, yep, we can distribute it. 3 weeks later, it's in Dymix. Dymix is no longer around anymore. Wow, I know, broadly. Wow. So, and that was just this crazy moment. Yeah, for them to take it and then get it out there, it was really lightning fast. So that was, I think, the first step in going, great, book in bookstores, which promoted the business and what we did, and then leveraging that bit of credibility to then get Again, they're not really that popular anymore, but like local newspapers, right? So I then pitched local newspapers to do basically like a weekly editorial, right, with study tips. So, instead of having to do it on the internet, because, that wasn't a real thing back then, right?
Yeah.
It was like content, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it was like, cool. And
in your face.
if you're reading it as a parent and it's in the newspaper and you're like, oh, this dude's in the newspaper talking, like, he's probably good, right? Probably trust him. And so, we had a couple of newspapers that had
social proof.
Yeah, weekly editorial. Right?
But I want to go back to that really quick.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, I feel like especially a lot of younger people who haven't had their taste of business would look at the book and look at the fact that he published a book and be like, oh, he published a book, so he made money from it, and then he used that to.
No.
But
you don't make money on books.
The product you made, the actual thing you made the money from was the referrals from the newspaper.
Yeah, right. So basically, you're publishing a book not to really make money on the sales, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've published other books, since then, and I think ultimately it's
just
much
like adding
more,
people to the email list.
Yeah, it's much more about like a way for people to sort of engage with you, right? Yes, it's going to build more trust for those that do purchase the book. Amazing, right? But a lot of the time, it's the other doors the book opens.
Yeah.
So for us, the book was never really about like going, oh, this is going to be a bestseller. Although, we sold a bunch of copies, nice, right? Yeah. For us, it was much more about, what schools, we got an invite to go into schools now to talk about this, right?
You got an in. You opened the door.
Right? And that's an opportunity for them to then get familiar with the ArtistSmart brand and know who we are, right? So great. It was a door opener for, media, right? We got a whole bunch of media coverage off the back of like, a book being written by, I was 21 at the time, so it was like, hey, this young person's written this book, great, lots of media coverage, editorial. So it was more what the book opened than the book itself, right? And then that was where, it was instead of word of mouth, sure, we still had word of mouth.
Yeah.
But that was where, that really, the book launched the business, and it was now, okay, great. There's other ways for people to hear about us that was then bringing in sufficient inquiries that was more than just, like it's word of mouth and they want me. Right? Because like I'm the person that's been out there. It was like, there's ArtistSmart, we'd love to. And that was then the point where, we were able to be like, great, we can start growing a team here because we've now got, the inquiry volume that's starting to grow for stuff that, I can't help them with. So that was like early days in really like, and no, like all of that, I literally copy and pasted. So, like, as I said, I just literally took the stuff I'd learned the year before that I'd been reading and was like, oh, that's looking really good. So there was a guy at the time, Dale Beaumont, he's like a entrepreneurship education guy in Australia.
Right.
He published a bunch of books at the time. He released, I think, 20 at one time where he went and interviewed people. He called them like secrets of internet entrepreneurs exposed or secrets of like marketers exposed, right? And his model was basically, you'd probably seen him, right? His model was go and find a bunch of experts in the industry, right? Go and ask them a bunch of common questions that people have, right? And then package it in a book, publish it, right? And then he used that to promote his education programs on the back end, right? And so I saw him do that and he doubled down, like more than doubled down. He went from 1 book to 20 books. So clearly it was working for him to do 20 books, hustle, right? Yeah. So I saw that and went, if it works for him, I'm going to just copy and paste in it, in a similar industry. So you don't need to even recreate the wheel. I think a lot of the time it's like, we got to do something super unique and, like actually I did nothing unique. The title of my book, the book that I published was Secrets of HSC Success Revealed. It was like almost the same, varied it for the industry, right?
Yeah.
But it was almost the same. So I would say that, there's often a lot of parallels that you can take from like other tangential or other industries where you can go, like that's working really well for them. Like, great, let's jump in and use that here.
It's a copy and paste. It's the same thing. Yeah.
So that's early days of like, marketing and sales in terms of just trying to really build some awareness at the end of the day around our differentiation.
Cool. So to simplify it down really quick, so use your product as a way to open the door to other products and open the door to other business and more business.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, that can be tricky, but I think certainly, I think often, I'd say there's a couple of things to simplify. I know we're trying to get into like, maybe something that's snappy, right? I'd say one, interview your audience, right? Find out their biggest pain points and then go and get the answers to those pain points, right? And then use that to build your product because in doing so, you'll have a much better product that has product market fit, firstly, right? Because you're connecting to people's deep pain points. But then you can then use that to go, great, how do I, leverage this to become credibility, authority, but also get my first 50 customers? Because if you interviewed these 50 people and they've just shared their pain points, and then you've gone out and got the solution. You're then going back to say, hey, I've just like built this product that just does all those things that you said you really needed. And they're like, sweet, sign me up if you've done a good job at it, right?
Of course, yeah.
So it's also a really neat way to like build your first 50 customers through that sort of pathway.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go to the chapter 5. Final chapter in this location. We'll go for a quick walk.
Nice.
I want to know how you actually start a brick-and-mortar business. So again, we interviewed Chris Lucas from Hello Hello, who built his nursery, and that was incredible. And that was really interesting, and our audience really loved that because he's got a physical business. I want to know the process. Like, we're talking the process from actually getting a lease to actually, you know, fitting out, stuff like that. Was there a point where you...
Painful.
Yeah, was there a really painful point that you had? Let's talk about that.
We didn't go to physical space for a long time, right? And in hindsight, you know, probably would have been great to do it earlier in many respects. So we operated, you know, in-home, mobile, online, right, for, I don't know, like 8 years, 7 years maybe before we went, you know what, we need a space simply because it's going to create community. It's going to, you know, better enable culture that we're wanting to create and more word of mouth, right, that comes off the back of that. I think painful simply because, one, you know, you've got to spend a lot of time finding and sourcing the right location, right? Finding the right location, not just like geographically, although that's one thing. You know, you want to make sure that you're doing your analysis. So we looked at, you know, public transport. We looked at, you know, socio-economics. We looked at demographics. Yeah, exactly. For us, schools are an important, factor. Like, what are the schools in an area? Transportation, really critical. So we did that. We were fortunate that we also had customer data, right? You know, because we've been a business for a number of years, right? I think it's hard when you don't have that and you're needing to be like opening a physical location here. You know, then you've got to really rely on government census data, right? And that's really good. There is a lot that is publicly available if you're willing to go deep. For us, we were fortunate that on top of that, we could layer on, well, we've been around for, you know, as I said, about 7 years at the time.
Or established business.
Yeah, where are we getting inquiries from? You know, where is there like where we're seeing some hotspots, right, that we want to go in and support. So that helped us. Then you got to find the space itself. And I mean, that's going to vary across different industries, right? Like for us, there's a bunch of, as an educational institution, there's a bunch of requirements you need to meet, right? Just from like a health and safety perspective, right? So that limits straight away the types of places you should ideally find. So for example, you need to have good disabled access, right? Yeah. Now, if you're just an office space, actually you don't, ironically, right? Education, you've got to have. So, you know, we need to make sure we're either ground floor, we've got a lift, for example, you know, where we're now, there's a lift, right, for disabled access, for example. So there's like key things, and that straight away narrows down the pool. You know, so let's say you've said, we're in Hornsby right now, let's say you've said Hornsby, great, like that's going to be the location that meets all the things. Well, cool, and then you've got your council criteria, right, in terms of your, you know, development approval, right, your DA consent, where it's like, well, all of a sudden now we've got to have a couple of other things at play. So then that narrows it down even further. Yeah. What I then found worked really well for us was to go and meet with a couple of, you know, commercial real estate agents that are in, you know, commercial leasing, and basically say, hey, look, here's what we're looking for, and then help get them to set up like a couple of days tour where they take you through and they take you through property after property.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you're able to like really tighten it.
This is just you, right?
Yeah, it's just me. Yeah. Yep. Of course, at times, right, like there's also a timeline. So for us, you know, I was starting this almost 18 months before, right? Because you don't know you're going to get the space you want. You know, you got to wait until maybe it comes available, all sorts of criteria and factors like that. But we'd start that relationship, go out, do the tours, and then from there, you're starting to find places where like that could possibly work, right? You know, come back, check it out, etc. Then you get into the really painful stuff. Like that's sort of the fun stuff. You're sort of like shopping, right? You're like looking around, right? It's fun, right? You're not having to. The next step is where it certainly gets a little more painful because that's where, you know, you're now needing to go, okay, well, what's the criteria? Does this meet? You know, then you've got, you know, some fun stuff in there, which is like design. Yeah. What do you want this to look like? You know,
you do this yourself, or
so the design in terms of the layout, right? We then worked with an architect because again, you're going to need plans submitted to council.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and so you know, often you're going to need, you know, architect or even, you know, like an urban planner, right? Who's going to be able to build the plan so you can submit it to get approval, particularly for our approval. So we then will work with an architect to get the plans approved. You know, you have to go through a whole development process. There's like, it's painful because, you know, it's very much you've got to get like the small details right. Yeah. You've got to get the timing right.
Yeah.
And then you get what's called basically like development approval, where you get approval to build it. So while we're like getting the plans confirmed and we're putting it through council, you're also then sourcing all of the like the product that you need, right? So in our case, it's glass, it's doors, it's chairs, tables, etc. You're trying to do all of that to like have it ready, right? So that you've got it, and then you've got to schedule like your development in terms of your build. Even once you've got it built, you've then got to get a private certifier in to like confirm that it meets the standards that are appropriate.
Fun stuff, man.
Right? Yeah, it's deep. Right?
I can't even pretend like I understand this stuff. I'm just in awe, man.
And then once you've got like private certified, ticked off, right, it goes back to council, it's all good, you can then like officially open. So it ends up being quite a lot of project management, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to line all, particularly if you've got an open date that you're aiming for.
Yeah.
Right, if you don't have an open date, it's like, well, things go a little slower. Cool,
you don't have
right?
Yeah.
But with an open date, you've really got to work backwards to go, okay, cool, like project management wise, what's happening when?
Yeah.
To make sure. So yeah, it can be. Now look, I say a lot of this is more challenging for us because we had specific council requirements as an educational institution.
Yeah.
You're opening an office.
Different.
Yeah, generally speaking, if it's already been, like it's already an office space, you literally just move it in. Don't have to do any of that stuff. You're just doing changing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe you're doing
fancy
a little
logo,
bit of changing some stuff up. Like that's super easy. And I've certainly done that before, right? In other places. If you're dealing with like an empty place though, that you're coming in to build, there can be some more approvals, and then that gets a bit painful.
Wow. Okay, so open day. Right? What are you feeling, man? Like I can imagine you were feeling nauseous, nervous.
Well, no, I wasn't actually.
You were excited.
Because it was so long to get there. Like we were seeing it like slowly build. The place build, right? We'd see the walls go up. You're there for so long that it just felt like another day in some respects.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. You want to make sure that everything's like looking good and so forth, right? But when we also opening day, like we might have only had on that first day like 2 people come in. Like there's also like that reality that you spend all that time getting it ready, and then it takes time for to build the word of mouth and to build the
get people in the door.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so I think that also just lowers the stress and the anxiety.
Well, it would have been a peaceful night when you went home and you're like, done, finally.
Yeah, finally, right? Although to be fair, it never feels like it is final until many months later. Because even though you're opening, you still haven't got everything. Like, you're still like, we need a bit of furniture for that. We need to get something a bit different there. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Never feels like that. Yeah.
We're back. And we were talking about chapter 5 before. We were talking about, the business acumen and everything like that, and moving into the space, leasing, everything we spoke about before. I want to know now.
You can probably cut a lot of the leasing. I don't think anyone wants to hear about the leasing.
Yeah, we'll make some clips. You know us. We've got short form. We'll pull it there. Feeds. They'll find us everywhere. So yeah. But now I want to talk about today. So it's 2023.
Yep.
Right? You just walked in the door, right? And you're running this business. Are there times you feel like an imposter?
There are times. I think in the past, yes, not anymore. Right? I think certainly when you're young, starting a business, you feel it all the time, right? Because you're literally making it up day to day. Because you just it's all about how quick can you learn.
Yeah.
And there's certainly times where, we'll do something new when it's something that I have no clue about, and there's an element of that. But I think, the more experienced you get, the less you feel that way.
Yeah. Right?
Simply because, you're just building up this this reservoir of experience that you can then draw upon to go, oh yeah, that's like when I did this. Cool, right? And so you're building up patterns, essentially, that you can apply. So I think, really fortunate, certainly today, don't feel that way. I love what I do and, have a real sense of clarity around what we're trying to do. Certainly, though, there were times in the past, where I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to have to wing this one, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely part and parcel of I think, starting your own thing, right? And it's really about, I think, getting comfortable with it in the early days, in just knowing, hey, I guess normalizing it, right? Like it's normal. Like you're not weird if you feel it. And in fact, if you're feeling it, the way that I found to reframe it is that usually all imposter syndrome means is that you don't know what you think you need to know to be able to do the thing. So in other words, great, all you've just done is stretch your comfort zone. So that's a win, right? I mean, that's really what life should be about.
Absolutely.
Right? About constantly stretching that. And so I think that was something that I found just as a little mental hack that helped me in the past, right? When I experienced it was to be like, all right, hey, wait a minute. This is just me stretching my comfort zone right now. That's a good thing. Let's double down on it.
Fun stuff.
So a lot of our marketing now, it's still word of mouth still remains the core, right?
Yeah.
I think ultimately you got to, create a great experience for people. So we get so many parents and students that share what we do. I think outside of that, what we appreciate, and I guess the lesson I learned from writing the book and that strategy was, answering problems that people have and providing them with content is a great way for them to get to know you and to build trust. And so we basically spent a lot of time investing in content, articles, guides, video, both across our website and across, YouTube, TikTok, Insta, and the like.
Yeah.
And have just really been, I guess, building on that year after year. So we're at a point now that we'll hit probably 2 million visitors each year to our site, right?
Wow,
across Australia, which, pretty amazing. If I was to say that, 5 years ago, that's where we'd land, I'd think you're ridiculous, right?
Absolutely.
Be happy with a couple of thousand, right? And a lot of that has just come from, really like knowing our audience really well, understanding their problems and then going, great, how can we create stuff that's genuinely helpful for them? And then through that, they're, in Google, they're going, how do I write an essay, or how do I deal with stress and anxiety before an exam? And we're there to help them, right? We've got, an article sort of top of funnel that's there to say, hey, here's some strategies that, we know from all the research, all the experience we've done. And at that point, then, there's there's content unlocks, right? It's like, great, jump on and you want some more support, unlock this extra guide we've got. Pop your email in.
Yeah,
right?
there we go. Yeah.
And then off the back of that, we'll just stay in touch with them each week. So we do a weekly newsletter, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on what's going on. That's got, I don't know, probably close to 50,000, maybe more now, plus people, over the time that, again, it's in flux, of course, but just a great way then to stay in touch with them. Continue to add value. Like, I think the approach we've always taken is always lead with value. Like, how do we always help, right? And then as we're helping, go like, hey, like, if you need some more help,
we're here to help.
Yeah, we're here as well, right? And we've got some other things that we can do,
Yeah, so I saw before, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you guys won some sort of marketing award for Semrush?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. We've won a couple. So we won, Semrush.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, we ran, I think, 3 with Semrush's national awards. For the life of me, I can't remember the categories now. I think one of them was like highest website growth.
Crazy.
I think one of them might have been best blog, right? In terms of company blog, which is a lot of our content. And there was another one in there as well. And then we recently were really fortunate enough to win the APAC Search Awards.
Insane.
Which is, it's not just Australia, it's Asia Pac. And that was for best use of content marketing. So, really cool. I mean, blown away because for us, we don't, we're not an agency.
No.
Most of the people that compete there are agencies that represent clients, right? Yeah. And so that's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
That's what they do, where for us, we've got an internal in-house team. One of our team members is hanging out over there, Clara, at the moment. So it's an internal team that, we've just, over the years, just sort of worked really hard to do this. So, it was like...
It's crazy.
Yeah, crazy, but so grateful.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I would love to know, before we wrap up, how are you actually getting your audience to your website? Now, I know you said sharing value.
Yeah.
How specifically? Are you doing Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads? What are you doing?
So, I mean, look, a lot comes through, organic search.
Okay.
So we've worked really hard at organic search.
Yeah.
I would say that, I think if I remember broadly, about 85% of visitors through to our site come from organic search, right? So that's where they're just, they're typing a search term, and
education.
Oh, well, yeah, it's like how to write an essay, how to study for something, whatever it is, right?
And that's through your internal website's blog, right? You have the blog on your website?
That's right. That's through all of the content. It's really like a content library, right, that we have. So bulk comes certainly, just through organic search. Beyond that, because we've been able to, with email, build a significant email base and also build great brand recognition, we do get a big chunk now that it's direct, right? They know who we are. Right, they're coming. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to go check out the Art of Smart website." For example. But that's taken a number of years, right? And that we see that grow year on year, which is great because that reflects just like brand, basically. Beyond that, we certainly do, some paid advertising alongside that, right? So we'll do some.
But it's not your biggest chunk.
No, it's not our biggest chunk, right? We do paid advertising as like a, almost like supplementary. There's keywords that you might not be ranking for, that you're not performing for, like from an organic point of view yet.
I'm guessing like school would be one that you wouldn't be ranking for at the moment.
Well, less so. Like it might even be more like quite bottom of funnel stuff, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's where someone's like, I don't know, like English tutoring Sydney, right? Maybe
rough one.
Yeah, like exactly. Like
got a lot of competition as well.
Yeah, so it's like pretty transactional, bottom of funnel. And then, of course, there's like social as well. You know, we'll do a lot on social and see traffic come back. But paid still represents like a fairly small part of the approach we've taken.
You're in a good position that organic is the top. Like, that's a lot of, especially a lot of clients we work with at Bhimian, a lot of them aren't like able to get that level of SEO because...
Well, I think it takes a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think, you know, definitely, you know, looking at it, if I was to do it again differently, right? Like looking back on the journey, what I would probably have done a little bit differently is I would have still made the investments we've made in, you know, creating incredible resources and content for our audience to support them. But probably what I would have done alongside that is almost given it a bit of a jump start with more paid, right? I think there's a role for it, and particularly because of this, you know, like you don't really see, my observation is you don't often see amazing results in content for about 18 months.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah. I mean, often it's longer. Sometimes it can be a little quicker, right? And so the challenge then is for a lot of businesses, is how do you then build inquiries in that 18-month period, right? Like, you know, you're spending money and time building content. Yeah. And so I think that's where like paid, Google, Facebook, you know, whether or not, you know, you're doing retargeting, whatever it is, amazing. And I think certainly when we've looked at going into new markets and we haven't yet had the brand awareness or we haven't had the content.
It's a good way to quickly get
it's a way to get in and start building customers, which then enables you to build word of mouth.
Right.
And referral if you're doing a good job, right? And then you've got that referral flywheel kicking in while you're then building your organic. Because I think, you know, one of the things I'm always mindful of is that, you know, things can change, you know, like cost per clicks, you know, reach, etc. in any given platform. And so one of our big approaches as well has been, how do we build our own asset?
Yeah.
Right. Rather than building always just on, you know, Google or Facebook or whatever it is, it's like, how do we also build something of value on our own asset, which is our website, fundamentally.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Final question before we wrap up. This has been amazing, by the way.
Cool.
I want to know, and you know your stuff, so I want to know, like, if you had to think of 4 or 5 apps, not iPhone apps, but, you know, just applications you use in your business. We could talk about Semrush, we could talk about, you know, vidIQ, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are the 5 apps that you use on a daily basis, would you say?
Daily basis?
Yeah, we can talk about CRMs, we can talk about customer communication, anything.
So, I mean, there's a little bit difference between me personally and the business, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So we use, day-to-day, we use Slack, internal messaging, right? Really key. We'll use Groove. It's basically like a team inbox. Yeah. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of them on the market, right?
Is that GROOV?
Yeah, VE.
Right? Oh, VE. They VE.
Okay, cool. So it's basically, like a shared inbox so that we've got role-based emails so we can have team members come in. That's key. We have like a CRM and like a all-in-one workplace management tool that we have.
Which CRM?
It's custom.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So
I tried doing that once.
So no, we really, we've got an amazing partner on that who's incredible.
Cool.
So yeah, it's custom, and then we use Zapier. Like Zapier is like critical for automation. Yeah. So that's 4 tools.
4 tools.
And then
maybe
phone
the
and
communication.
well, it's not particularly exciting, but yeah, phone and SMS.
Well, actually, a quick question about that. How do you? This is a question for me personally.
Yeah.
We use Rambox in Bhimian to keep all our software together. All our literally. Honestly, I'm just going to give you some free game right here. Rambox, we're not affiliated to them, but they're one of the best apps we ever use because they can connect literally every single application together.
Cool, I haven't heard of Rambox.
So I want to know, how do you, because you have so many social medias and stuff like that, how do you keep them all together? How do you keep track of everything?
So, I mean, one, from a connection point, we do use Zapier for a lot, right? I would say the other tool that we do use, where it's sort of in a bit of process of change, but we have used HubSpot for the last couple of years.
Right, yeah.
And so that does some of the job of, from a socials point of view, bringing stuff in. But beyond that, we'll run reports and our team will then pull them together in terms of like meetings, in terms of how we bring it together from a reporting point of view. But I'm not sure if that...
Well, it does, because I don't think people realize, like, especially saying, this is why I'm so interested in it, because when I first started and everything, I tried Zapier, I tried Infusionsoft, I tried ActiveCampaign, I tried every single software you can think of pretty much. And the one thing I realized is that, number 1, keeping track of passwords. Number 2, keeping track of the actual software you use for different businesses and stuff. And number 3, for example, we had, I think
particularly if you're an agency, because in your case, right, like you've got so many different clients that will have different tool sets, right? Like, one might be on WordPress, one might be on, whatever, right? Even from just a website point of view through to then, one's using Unbounce, one's using lead pages, like it can be a nightmare, right?
Absolutely.
So, I guess we quite don't have that exact same problem. But I think definitely, like...
But it's always... I ask every guest...
I mean, we have an internal wiki that we use for our team as well.
I'm guessing on Notion?
No. I mean, we use another, Notion wasn't around when we started, not custom.
Yeah.
It's called Tetra.
Okay.
It's like a wiki specific for companies. Notion's great though. We've
Oh
certainly
my God,
thought about
Notion's
making the
amazing.
shift
Yeah,
over
yeah,
to
yeah.
Notion for that. That's probably how we just practically bring stuff together so the team's all on the same page around tools and so forth. Yeah.
Cool. Final question. Last one, I swear. I know I've said this like 3 times already, but I know.
No.
We'll finish now.
Yeah.
You brought up personal apps. I want to know specifically what's on your phone that you use every single day. Your phone, not anywhere else.
Well, I don't use that much on my phone, to be
Is that
honest.
important?
Yeah, so
Didn't I set up your phone like 3 years ago? Do you
set
remember
up
that?
Daniel's phone.
It was like, oh, Daniel, yeah. I remember that.
But we've had lots of conversations
Far
about
out, it's
this
been a
back
while,
in the day. So yeah, I mean, my goal with my phone is to really like strip the apps from it.
Yeah.
So I'm not using it as a dumb phone, right? But I'm trying to be really clear on, I don't want it to be something that I'm picking up constantly throughout the day. I don't have email on it. I don't have social media on it. So I don't get notifications because I don't want that. So I use my phone, Spotify, largely podcasts, right? A bit of music. That's probably one of the main things. I use Google Calendar. I live by that, right? Yeah. Time blocking. We can go deep
I
on
don't
that.
do that anymore,
So Google Cal, and then Google Maps when I'm traveling. Honestly,
simplicity.
And the phone, right? That is it.
Brilliant.
I keep it really simple.
Cool. All right, we'll wrap up here. Thanks again, Rowan. Really appreciate the chat.
Really great.
It's been amazing. Yeah. Again, this is Rowan Kunz from Art of Smart Education. Do you want to plug your website really quick?
Yeah, if you're either in Year 7 and 12 or you're a parent of a student in Year 7 and 12, head over to artofsmart.com.au. We've got a huge library of free guides, resources, videos, and more that'll help you navigate your specific subject, as well as the journey from Year 7 and 12 into university. So check it out, artofsmart.com.au, and hit the resources section.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.